The dark night of the soul is one of the worst things that will ever happen to you until it isn't. And it's sort of a rite of passage when we want to spiritually evolve and awaken. And often it's something that happens without us being mentally, emotionally, or spiritually prepared for it. And really what the dark night of the soul is the breaking down of the ego. But how it formulates itself in this physical world is us coming up to our greatest fears. For instance, if my ego is holding on very tightly to my idea of safety and security, then what may happen before a dark night of the soul is I may lose my job. Why? Because that's my biggest fear. It's going to trigger me into a lack of safety and a lack of security. But everything that we fear is an illusion, and this is why we go through the dark night. This is why we face our greatest fears, because then and only then can we see that they're not as real as we have been making them out to be. And that is really the breaking down of the ego. But we have to go through it to be able to experience that and know it. Because before our dark night of the soul, we are the ego. We are the mind. We're not yet recognizing that we're a soul in this temporary physical experience. And we get caught up in our fears. We get caught up in the egoic illusions. We get caught up in separation. And this can really derail the direction of our lives if we stay in that state. And so a dark night of the soul really, yes, it can be the worst thing that happens to you, but it ends up being the best thing that happens to you. And so for those of you who are going through this experience right now, I'm making this video to give you a piece of advice that I wish someone gave me when I went through my dark night of the soul. And so I hope this video can be of use for you today and assist you. So generally speaking, the dark night of the soul is going to make us consciously aware of our deepest fears and our shadows. And so what you want to do when you're going through the dark night of the soul is maybe grab a pen and paper and start to ask yourself, what fear is coming up? Like, what is the deepest core fear that is coming up? Because the dark night of the soul can be triggered by maybe a car accident. It can be triggered by the loss of a loved one. It can be triggered by a breakup, a loss of a job, whatever it may be. But we have to go a step further and ask ourselves, what fear or what core wound is that activating? If you're really honest with yourself, it usually comes down to some sort of belief, a belief that I am afraid that I will not be secure. I am afraid that I will be alone. I am afraid that I will not be enough, right? And really get honest with yourself, because that fear or that core wound is the only thing that's blocking you from your freedom, from your spiritual freedom and your spiritual evolution. And it's that illusion of fear that is stopping you from experiencing your bliss. And so when you're having to face the fear, when you're having to face the shadow, it's the worst experience. But when you can begin to take little steps closer and closer and closer to this fear, which happens in the dark night of the soul, keep moving towards it. Keep opening yourself up to that fear. And the more you expose yourself to the fear, the more you realize that it's not as scary as you thought. Because the truth of spirituality is that the only thing that exists is love. What separates us from that idea is the mind, and the mind creates duality, which is why we experience love and we experience fear, right? That's the whole point. We came here as physical beings to experience ourselves, but the only way to know what love is we have to experience the opposite of ourselves, right? So we come in here and we experience fear, but we also forget that we are not that. And so we get caught up in this illusion. And what awakening is we're waking up to our true nature. We're realizing that this is a temporary experience. And yes, we can have fear. We can feel the emotions of fear, but understanding that it is not actually real. So one of the things that helped me most to overcome my dark night of the soul is to stop resisting what is coming up. Like I said, there's going to be, if you're aware, there's going to be a core fear or a core wound that's being activated. And if you can allow yourself to step into it, get closer to it. Many of us actually prolong our dark night of the soul because we keep resisting and resisting and resisting, and we run away, right? And, I say this all the time, but we run away through our obsessive compulsive behaviors and addictions. Addictions keep us from the self. But the thing is everyone's afraid to get to the self, but the self is the most beautiful, liberating experience once we can get past the fear. And so in order to overcome the dark night of the soul a lot faster is to stop resisting what is coming up. Yes, there's a fear that's wanting to show itself, to reveal itself. It's your shadow side. And once you can shine the light of consciousness on that fear, which is really just your presence, you being aware of it, you sitting in it, you seeing it, you feeling it, right? The more you do that, the more you shine the light of consciousness on your fears, the more they dissolve. And that is waking up. And that helps you get through the dark night of the soul. But if you're in the dark night of the soul and you continue to run from yourself, whether it be through, obsessions, addictions, chasing after things, whatever it may be, you're going to prolong that experience. You're going to prolong the fear and the pain, right? Whatever we resist, we persist. If you want something to stop being in your experience, you have to allow it to be there. The second you allow something to be there, it passes. If we keep resisting it and saying, no, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that, well, we're saying to the universe, because it's a yes-based universe, we're actually saying, yeah, I want more of that, I want more of that, I want more of that. The second you just allow it to be, it doesn't have that power over you anymore. And that's true freedom. So I hope that this video could give you some insight. If you guys are at this point right now and you're in the throes of the dark night of the soul, this is exactly why I've created this spiritual toolkit. All of these lessons, all of these insights are what helped me overcome my dark night of the soul, helped me to liberate myself from negative thought forms. This goes into self-love. It goes into healing relationship dynamics. It goes into conscious manifestation. It's a 7-step process. And also one really important masterclass, which is the Take Your Power Back Masterclass. This explains duality. This explains collapsing the duality. We come into this experience and we have so much fear, and we believe in that fear. And when we believe in it, we repel all of these things that we want. And as any of you guys know, when we're trying to attract things into our lives and we keep repelling them, we're going to end up in a depressed state, right? Similar to the feeling of being in a dark night of the soul. A depression is really just a shutting down of the chakras. That's all it is. It's a shutting down all of the energy centers within us, and it doesn't feel good because it's not our true nature. So all of these courses and information are available. There's also a promotion going on for the spiritual toolkit if you're interested, but those are all the programs there. In addition, if you're struggling financially, I do have a promotion going on for the Clear Your Money Blocks workshop, which I highly recommend if you want to expand your knowledge after the spiritual toolkit. All right, but I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. Go down below, subscribe, hit the bell to get my notifications, and I'll see you soon. Take care.